Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's our pleasure to introduce you to Hallie Crawford. Hallie Crawford has been a wonderful career coach and partner of ours for many, many years. Too many that I would wish to cite, but we
Me
haven't
too.
aged, so it's really not an issue. But Hallie's a great friend to Georgia Tech and the Alumni Association in particular. So we appreciate her coming today and sharing her knowledge about salary and benefits negotiation. The webinar will be recorded, so we will make that available to you towards the end of the week, along with feedback about the session and also ideas that you could share for future sessions
Yeah.
in alumni career development. Your microphones are muted, and we would ask you to put all of your questions in the Q&A. I'll monitor that. The chat is more for if you have issues with connectivity or other issues. But if you have formal questions, please put those in the Q&A, and then we can handle those as we go, and it keeps a record so we can get back to people.
Yeah.
Without further ado, Hallie Crawford.
Thanks, Glenn. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you all for being here today. Hope you're having a great summer so far. And we were just talking about this in advance, that salary and benefits negotiation, it's not anyone's really favorite thing to do. In the 20 plus years that I've been coaching, I don't think I've had any client, maybe just one, if that, say, I love this part of the job search or promotion process. So we are here today to talk about how to make this as easy as possible on you, how to prepare, all this other good stuff. So by way of quick introduction, as Len was saying, I've been partnered with Georgia Tech maybe 15 plus years, give or take. I'm a certified career coach. I'm actually based in Atlanta, so don't live too far from campus, actually. We have coaches in different parts of the country who provide our coaching services. I've been coaching and training since 2002. So I started my company in 2002 when I lived in Chicago. I'm now based in Atlanta. And I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and a master's degree from the University of Illinois. And we want to give you as much helpful, useful information as possible today. And so that you don't get overwhelmed, a couple of things I wanted to share and recommend. Number one, as Lynn said, as a reminder, we are recording today, so you will get a copy of that. Number two, you can grab a copy of our slides. I'm going to put a link to that in the chat box right now, so you can download those and read through them and don't feel like you have to frantically write everything down today. And I would suggest that you choose one action step from today that makes the most sense for you and where you are in your journey of negotiating. Some things may be more comfortable for you than others. So pick one thing that makes the most sense and resonates for you, and then you can piggyback on everything else, revisit the recording and the slides later to add to improving your negotiation skills. Now, let's talk for a couple of minutes before I show you our agenda. And I would invite you, as we get started here too, to please locate the Q&A box. And as Lynn said, put your questions there. That helps me filter through which items are questions that I need to answer versus what are more comments. And also locate the chat box for us as well. So there's lots of challenges with negotiation. If you take a look at this first slide here, a lot of our clients will tell us that they get really nervous when they have to do this. Sometimes they'll say, understandably, I don't know what to say. I'm not sure how to articulate my ask, all that other good stuff. They feel the communication part of it is kind of a struggle. And then a lot of our clients will tell us too that they have imposter syndrome, that they want to ask for this, but they're like, gosh, am I really worth that? They lack the confidence in their value and their benefit to an organization, so they don't ask for as much as they're actually worth. So there's lots of different challenges, and we want you to know up front, number one, that you're not alone. This is totally normal. It should be in one of people's top 10 least favorite things to do, along with moving and other things. And one of the things that I really want you to get from today is at the bottom of this slide on the right-hand side. is that what you want to do at the beginning of and throughout the process of negotiation with your current employer, if it's for a promotion or a raise, or a new employer, and the advice we're going to give will go across the board here, just by the way. But throughout that process, you want to set the tone of an open, direct, two-way conversation with people and making sure that you're setting that tone, that it's not just I say something, you say something else, and then that's it. We never talk again. That you're, indicating I'd like to discuss this. I'm open to talking about it, etc. And I see we got a note that the link that I put in there we might have an issue with it. I'm going to bring up a QR code in just a moment and I'll work on that link too. So I'll give you the QR code for the slides and let's try that. Thank you for letting me know. So the second thing to know is that managers expect negotiation unless it's a very entry level role, or if they say up front in the job description or in your interview process, for example, this is a hard and fast salary. There's no room for negotiation. It's fair game for you to negotiate. And the statistics are here on this slide. So most managers expect people to negotiate and ask for a little bit more, something different, make some adjustments to the offer. And the majority of professionals, 55%, and we want that actually to be higher, they try to negotiate a higher salary. So we want you to do this, and please feel comfortable doing so. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda for today, and welcome, Charlotte. Glad you're here too. So here's what we're going to be discussing. And do me a favor, Ellen, if you could make sure that this QR code works for the slides, that would be great. Please know that we will provide the right link to the slides in the follow-up email as well. So if for any reason today we still have trouble with those links, we'll get it over to you. So what we want to discuss today is 10 tips to help you prepare for your negotiation, um, build your confidence related to it, and how to make the ask. Some of the things that we would recommend you say and do during the course of the meeting as well. And we're going to actually kind of sprinkle all of these throughout. So as we go through our 10 tips, we'll go through and cover all of these different topics. We're also going to discuss today topics that you could negotiate. So making sure that you're considering all options and things that could be on the table for you. As always, we will have, excuse me, Q&A at the very end. And we will also, I'm happy to answer questions as we progress. So feel free to ask questions as we go. I will pause along the way. Don't feel like you have to hold those. And then also know too that I will leave time for questions at the end. And Ellen, it may say survey at the top, but that may just be the URL. You just have to scroll down a little bit more. So when you're using the link in the chat box, everybody, for the slides, just scroll down a little bit more because the system that we use, they call it like survey. All right, let's dive in. So for the first thing that we want to be thinking about and kind of to break out our action steps for today is the first thing that you want to make sure you do really, really well, excuse me, is identify your goal. What do you want to ask for? What's your best case scenario? And also, what's your worst case scenario? So kind of like, what's your ceiling and what's your floor? What are you not going to go further below, just to make sure that you know kind of where you need to end the negotiation if it's not going to work for you, but also what's your ideal. We want you to also review your accomplishments, conduct some salary research, prepare some kind of document that helps you stay on track with your negotiation if you feel like you need this. And if in the case you feel like you need to remind them, for example, of some of your skills and strengths, you may want to have like a quick PowerPoint slide or something that you send over during the course of the conversation or afterwards. And we're going to talk about all of these things today. So the second step that we're going to walk you through today with our 10 tips that a lot of people don't do, and we really like to harp on this with our clients because it's also a really good idea in the middle of the slide here, is to anticipate and be prepared for their possible objections or concerns. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but the bottom line is that you want to actually, in your preparation, think about, okay, why would they not want to hire me? What would their concerns be? I don't have as much experience. I'm going to ask for too much, too high of a salary or whatever. Because talking about those kinds of things and you bringing them up in the right way during the course of the conversation is going to help you be better prepared and also in a way like not allow them to come up with those objections, if you will. Okay. And then the third thing we want you to do is to be really confident. And we'll talk about language that you can use. Communicate assertively and effectively, making sure that you come across as confident. It's about what you say, but it's also very much, as we all know, about how we say it. So when a newscaster, let's just say, comes on the news, we're more likely to believe them and listen to them in part. And I know this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get the gist because they're coming across as really confident. Okay. So, one of the first things when we're thinking about your goal is we want you to consider, okay, what's my goal salary, but also the benefits that I would like to have? Is it a raise or a promotion? And what are those numbers for me? Is it that within my current organization, let's say, if you're looking at preparing for your annual review, do you need to be able to negotiate or want to negotiate on your workload or projects or anything else? We also very often, understandably, are looking to negotiate for our benefits, whether it's flex time, remote work, health insurance, all that other good stuff. And in some cases, even for a brand new job, as part of our negotiation, we may want to say, in some cases, I'm okay with this salary as long as I'm able to work on these types of projects. Because you know, for example, that those will be fulfilling for you, but also move your career in the direction that you want to go. Okay. And then there could be education benefits that you want to be considering too. So we do want you to, when you're identifying your goal, consider the situation, what's appropriate, and what career stage you are in and what is needed next. And part of why we talk about your career stages, this is from Korn Ferry, which is a huge recruiting firm, is we move through these different stages in our career. And you want to be thinking not just about the money. The money is really important, so I'm not discounting that. But you want to also be looking within your negotiations and with this next step for you, career-wise, whatever it is, what's next for you in your career that's going to help you move to the next stage. Okay. Now, as part of your goals, what we also like you to consider or suggest you consider, this is our ideal career model. If you've been on a webinar with us before, these are the components to the right career fit for you. So if you are negotiating for certain things, and trying to get this next career step for you to be the right fit, we want you to consider all of these components. Are there certain things that you'd rather be working on that are more rewarding to you or play to your strengths more or would be more interesting to you? Do you want to gain a certain type of experience or gain some education as well as part of this next step? We want you to consider your personality type when you're negotiating for the role. And you could even be thinking about, for example, like, do I want a little bit of flex time, or would it be better for me, let's say, because I'm more introverted than extroverted, to make sure that I'm able to like work from home, or can I come in early on certain days of the week or whatever it is? Some of these will be more formal negotiating items. Some of these will be ones that you work on over time after you accept the offer. But we want you to consider everything and think big picture and broader scope about your career progression as well. And then finally, like we're going to talk a lot about today, is compensation, because that's a huge piece to the puzzle, obviously. All right, let's dive into our 10 tips to track your progress and your accomplishments, prepare for the negotiation, and make the ask. And by the way, when we're thinking about salary and benefits negotiation, please know that it's usually going to happen over the course of multiple days. It's typically not just you sit down, talk through things, and that's it. Sometimes that does happen, but we also don't want you to feel like you're putting so much pressure on the process that you have to answer them right away and have to know all the answers right then. It usually takes a few iterations to get to a meeting place that's a win-win. So, one of the first things that we highly recommend you do, and if you're already in the throes of negotiation, you've probably done some of this, but these are reminders for the other things we want you to continue to do and kind of add to your action steps as well. So, on the left-hand side, when you're preparing for the negotiation, if there are certain accomplishments or projects that are not on your resume necessarily, but you're like, this is going to help kind of enhance my case, you want to have those written down so that you discuss them and share those with the person you're negotiating with as appropriate. We honestly want people to have this as an ongoing document throughout their career. So, yes, we want people to keep their resume and their LinkedIn up to date, sure. But we also want people to have a Word doc on their desktop where they write down, okay, these are some of the measurable results. If you look at the right-hand side, things that I've achieved over the past year, testimonials I've gotten from people, awards, classes. We always tend to forget when it comes to rewriting our resume what some of those things were. And it's better to keep it as a running list so that you're ready to go and you can pick out what makes the most sense to share. You can identify the top items that you want to reference in your own notes, or if you think it's going to help you, if you're negotiating in your annual review, for example, for a higher salary, you may want to create like just a very quick little PowerPoint for your boss to say, here are some of the projects I worked on this year. Here are the things that I accomplished and what happened as a result. Now, one might think, well, doesn't my boss know these things? Yes, but they also have a full-time job and they're busy too. So you do not want to assume that you don't want to force them to connect the dots. You want to connect the dots for them to make it easy on them to make the right decision, which is giving you what you want in an ideal world. Okay. So reviewing your accomplishments and keeping this document long-term is a great idea. The second thing that we want you to make sure you do, even if it's just every 6 months, we're not saying you have to keep your resume up to date every month. That's too much. But if you do it at least every 6 months annually, thinking about not just the tangible things that you have accomplished, but if you take a look at this next slide on the top left, what are those other things that are soft skills like leading teams remotely? I managed through change really well, specific projects you worked on, but those leadership strengths and those other things that are critically important to employers. People are going to, or an employer is going to choose a candidate as long as your experience and expertise is relatively the same. But even if you are, let's just say, a little less qualified, if they have a really good vibe from you that you're going to fit within their culture, that you're going to hit the ground running, all this other good stuff, they're going to lean towards you as a candidate more. So the soft skills are fair game here. And as a quick reminder, update your resume to reflect any of those accomplishments. Even if you are meeting with your current boss for a raise or promotion, have your resume ready to go. What if they ask for it? It could also be a way that you kind of like handle the meeting a little bit too. And remember, and let's go ahead and launch our first poll here about resume and LinkedIn. Remember, every time you're applying for a new job, you want to personalize and tailor that resume for that position, because then you can go and reference back and say, these are the reasons why I'm qualified and why I'm asking for this range of salary. So we'll give you a moment to fill this out. And it's okay if your answer is no in some ways. Not everybody is perfect at this, and we totally understand that. And it's probably good that I'm not allowed to vote. I think I do mine once a year. I probably should do it more. All right. Yay, look at these numbers. Really pleased about this. I feel like people are getting the message, which is great. The fact that we've got 68% are, that's fantastic. And for those of you that don't, like we said, this is totally normal. Don't feel bad. Let's work on getting more, like, even if you just put, for example, a quick calendar recurring task for you every 6 months. Hey, where do I need to update my resume? And worst case scenario, if you start keeping this accomplishments document, that's going to help a lot. And one person is saying, answering the survey in here, I keep LinkedIn updated, yeah, more regularly than resume. I think that's normal for a lot of people, but you want to keep both. And just by the way, if you need any help with your resume or LinkedIn, we always offer these services. Happy to talk with you about those. There'll be more opportunity to schedule a consult with me if you want to talk about anything. But just so you know, we do want you to have a good branded banner. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is search engine optimized, and making sure that all of your different sections are really up to date too. Okay, so let's talk about tip number 3. Tip number 3 may seem kind of obvious, but I think sometimes people don't do it as well as they could. And really take a step back. And as a lot of people, we like to say, read the room. What's going on within your organization, with the economy, within your industry, and also your career stage? Is this the right time to be asking for what I want? If you're in job search mode and you're interviewing for a job, yes, this is the right time to negotiate. But you always want to keep kind of the big picture in mind. What's going on with the industry, the organization? Are they thriving or are they struggling? Be creative about what else you could ask, what else could be available to you, more 401k matching or flex time or other options. And we'll talk about these more as we go. When you're making the ask for a new job, you want to ask closer to the time that you feel like they're getting closer to making you an offer. You don't ask on the very first call, but I do want to say sometimes in that very first call, you might be asked about your salary range. So while I don't want you to bring it up like right away because they need to feel you out a little bit more and see what the, right next steps are and if they even want to get to that point with you, you do want to be prepared, even in a screening call, for a range to give them. And what you can say is, the range I'm looking for is between, X and Y. You may give them between like a $2,000 to $5,000 range, for example, at the beginning. And you can say right then and there, ask them, is that within what is budgeted for the position? So that at least you're setting the tone at the beginning, like we said earlier, that you want this to be a conversation, open, direct, straightforward. Okay. The second thing, as you're reading the room, if, for example, you are realizing that it's struggling right now, this may not be the best time for them to give me the promotion, or they may not have as much wiggle room. Are there other things that you might be willing to ask for? Flex time, remote work. Maybe it's a title change or a bump up in your title. Maybe it's a signing bonus. So there's different things that you can try to negotiate for, and we're going to talk about these more as we go. But the bottom line here is just be mindful of what's going on. Don't go into a negotiation without a sense of what's happening within your industry and where you're looking. Tip number 4 is to do your homework also with your salary research. And we recommend on the left-hand side of this slide to research the standard salary for the desired position, but also for your current position, because you want to get a sense of, are you higher or lower paid kind of within the market? Now, if you use sites on the right-hand side of this slide, like Glassdoor, PayScale, Indeed, and the Bureau of Labor and Statistics is another great resource for salary compensation or comparison and ranges. you'll find, and this happens to everybody, it's normal, that they're gonna give you a range. And sometimes it can feel like, gosh, it's such a huge range. So what I would do is use all of the different sites and try to get a sense from what, the different information that you're getting, what makes the most sense, where do you kind of fall in the middle. I would also suggest using ChatGPT a little bit for this too, because that's gonna, amalgamate all of the information. I'm not even sure if I'm using that word correctly, but you get the gist and see what information you get there. But in the middle here, it's also okay if you're conducting informational interviews with people, if you're talking with recruiters, to ask them, like, this is the salary range I'm thinking of asking for. Is that reasonable? Am I on the right track? So try to get a sense from people that you know or recruiters that you may be talking to, et cetera, to find out if you're in the right ballpark. And then finally, when we're talking about salary research, remember a moment ago we said, is this what's budgeted? These are some of the things that you can also say. Um, what's the salary range for this position? This is a way to ask about that. I'm asking for this. Is this within the range? So that you're again posing it as a question and not just saying something, they don't respond or they say, no, it's not. And then, you want to keep the conversation going. So, for example, if they said it's not, would you mind sharing with me what the range is and a little bit more of the thinking behind that? Because I am open to discussing this further. That's another good thing that you want to continue to reiterate throughout the course of the conversation so that they know, okay, this is what, this person is willing to discuss this a little bit more. When you're looking for, we had a question come through with C-suite personnel. I would honestly do some of the sites that we just described. Use ChatGPT. I believe that theladders.com has also some salary research on there too, and that is usually C-suite as well. Great question. Thanks for asking that. And if I think of any others while we're talking today, I'll let you know. Now, with the salary research, some of the other language that you can use in the course of your conversation is if they haven't brought it up yet, what is the benefits package offered? Is there flexibility in what is budgeted for this position? In some states now, Colorado, for example, and I believe Massachusetts as well, they are required to post the salary. I love that they're doing that. Not all states are like that, but one of the things that you could ask is, is there flexibility there? I saw what's on the website. Could we talk a little bit more about this? And when you are thinking about your current compensation package, do include your benefits, so insurance and everything else. Now, at the very bottom left-hand side here, it is illegal in a lot of states, if not all of them. I need to double check how many, to ask you what you currently make. But we all know that sometimes that comes out in the course of maybe an informal conversation. And in some cases, you may want to bring that up and say, in general, or I make approximately my current compensation package is this. You may want to share it if it's going to help with your negotiation. Okay. And then finally, this example on the right-hand side of remote work is just one example of talking again about, like we said, is what are the other soft skills and the things that are going to be really important and maybe specific to this particular position that you want to make sure that you can be successful in these particular areas or examples. And for example, you may be willing to negotiate for a little bit lower salary if you're able to or interested in working remotely. So just try to be creative and kind of think outside the box. So one of our clients, Maggie in Pennsylvania, she was applying for a job at University of Pennsylvania, and they got really close to her salary range. I think they were about 2,000 apart annual salary. And they came to the point where they said, look, this is our stopping point. And she said, okay, if I accept that, would it be possible for me to work to every Friday or every other Friday from home, save on gas, car wear and tear, all that other good stuff? They said yes, she took the job. So again, we want to be creative about things. Let me pull this up for just a second so you can start thinking about other perks and things that you could negotiate. We have a question that came through and a question for later. I'll hold that question for later. But one question in the chat, is it different talking to a recruiter from a company or a recruiter from a recruiting firm? It usually is to a certain extent, kind of depends on how the person, approaches things. But in my view, you can be a little bit more direct and straightforward in a way with a recruiter who's external and just say, look, do you think I should negotiate and all of that and get their advice on things versus a recruiter who's internal. They're you want to work with them almost as if you're negotiating or talking with your prospective, the hiring manager. So they are going to have a little bit less objectivity. And a recruiter from a recruiting firm also, they tend to want you to get the job because they want to get paid their commission versus a recruiter within the organization really is focused more so on, I need to make sure I get the right person in here. Not that the others are not, but you get the gist. Other perks and things to take into consideration are here. We've had some people actually negotiate their start date. Like I can't negotiate or I can't start then. Can I have an extra week or whatever it is? Here's the bottom line. Some organizations can be more flexible with this than others, and that's just kind of part of the deal. But at the end of the day, if you don't ask, as we all know, the answer is no. So you might as well ask and find out, what the different options are. Make sure that you know exactly what your priorities are. So again, you know where you're willing to walk away, and you're also not asking for 10 things up front. You're asking for maybe 2 or 3 things knowing that you may try to negotiate for something else down the line. Remember that education, specific projects, and growth opportunities are fair game. In the middle here of this next slide, if you can't get to the salary that you want right then, you could ask them at that time, if, based on performance and if I work towards or work on these certain projects, is it possible that, we can revisit this conversation in 6 months? What is the typical compensation or raise structure every year at this organization so that you're also understanding what's coming up for you going forward in the future? So it's kind of also an if not now, when could it happen if it's a possibility? And remember before too, we talked about signing bonus, those types of things. So remember the total package, make a priorities list for yourself because we also don't want you to go in asking for, every single thing. If you're willing to negotiate on or compromise on certain things, go for what's really, really important to you. Now let's talk about tip number 6 for a moment. And this is, we discussed earlier, being confident. And then I've got 2 questions that came in and I'll go ahead and answer those. So your attitude is critical. And we all know how your attitude affects your actions, which in turn is going to affect your outcome. We all know how it feels when we go into a networking event, for example, confident versus not so confident. And a lot of the times with our clients, when we are working with them and starting with them up front, the majority of the time they will actually say to us that they are the biggest obstacle to not getting what they want because they're not either asking or they're not asking in the right way or they're holding back and not asking for as much money as they could. We had a person once come to us, she hadn't gotten a raise in 10 years. She never asked and just didn't think she should. So think about before you even have this conversation, make sure that you've got prep work that you can do right in advance, whether it's reading affirmations, visualing how you want the conversation to go. It's okay to have notes to remind yourself of what you want to say, especially if it's just over the phone. And as my mom always says, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Do whatever you need to do to feel really confident and coming across in the right way because how you make the ask is a really big deal too, I promise. So I'll leave this slide up for a moment while I answer a couple more questions. For soft benefits, for example, work from home once a week, how enforceable is the agreement that, given that you get it in writing? So yeah, it's not incredibly enforceable, to be honest. I mean, if the company decides we're going to have everybody work, but come back to the office, they can decide that. So technically, legally, it's not like legally enforceable. It is good to get it in writing so that you do have something and can push back if something like that does come up. But know that at the end of the day, with things like that, yes, the company can obviously change their mind. Another question, if a job has multiple locations posted, but one salary range, is it appropriate to ask the range for each location I'm considering? Absolutely, because geographic location, whether you're in a city versus not, can make a difference, as we all know, in terms of salary. So when you're performing your salary research, this is why you want to put in your location because it can make a difference. So yes, I would ask for the ranges for those different ones to find out, just so you're extra clear. Another question, strategies for employees negotiating with an executive who only gives comp increases in response to resignations and shuts down other discussions. This is a tough situation. Yeah, that approach, it does suck. It is not creating a positive culture. We've had so many clients, unfortunately, come to us saying they've been in a really tough and sometimes toxic work environment. So I'm sorry this is happening. Um, a couple of things here is I would still make the ask, but like I would wonder if you should consider bringing in HR, not to like go tell on this person or whatever, but like talk with them about compensation as well? Or is there someone else that you could discuss it with too? Not that I think it's a great idea to do an end run, but I'm kind of trying to go across, cover the bases here. But if there's someone else you can discuss this with, and if you're not getting what you want, I would consider at least like having a conversation with HR to find out more if there's something more that can be done. It's a good question. And if this is the type of person that you're working for, I just would be thinking to myself, is this the place I want to stay too? Because it sounds not ideal, far from ideal. So let's take a look at being confident. And thanks for asking that question too, because I think a lot of people are in that situation, unfortunately. Couple of things here. When you're having the conversation, you're leading with your value. You're not saying things like, well, I deserve, or in order to cover my expenses or cost of living. Now, if you're getting deeper into the negotiation, you may want to say, or if you feel like it's to that point, you could say, finally, cost of living as well. But we want you to be leading with your value and why you deserve it and why you're worth it. Because what you're going to give to them as a result is worth it. Look at the negotiation as a two-way discussion, like we've said. So any negative thinking, imposter syndrome wise or otherwise, push that aside right before you go into that meeting and that conversation. Get help with this and get support. In another couple of tips, we're going to talk about practicing your ask in front of the mirror with a friend or family member. Practice it and videotape yourself. Half the time, we don't know how we're coming across. Review that list of accomplishments to help you be confident before you go in. Get some coaching and get some help to make sure you're coming across in the right way. And then finally, on the bottom of the left-hand side here, these sentences like, I'm open to discussing options. I'm open to discussing this further. And if you are open to negotiation, you can say that this is my range, but I am open to negotiation because I want to best understand what the range is here. Now, we're not saying that for everybody, but if you're in a situation where you're concerned that they'll think you'll ask for too much, you just want to be mindful of that. For those of you who have attended our sessions before, you know that we always offer a free consult. If you would like to learn more about our services and how we can help you, I'd be happy to talk with you. to find out if it's the right thing for you to do at this time. If you do register for this, and I just put a link to it also in the chat box, please remind me and let me know that you came from Georgia Tech because we do give a discount. So two questions that came through, and I'll leave this up for a moment. How do I provide the range without anchoring effect? I'm not sure exactly if you could restate that for me. Um, but here's what I'll say in case this is what you're asking, is I would give a range of around like 5K, give or take, depending on if anything's listed on the website and what your personal range would be. Um, it's good to answer the question or bring it up kind of later on. But here's the thing, if you don't want you, if you're trying not to pigeonhole yourself to exactly that range, this is where you can bring up and say, I'm open to discussion on this and would like to discuss this further. This is what I was thinking. Is this within the range that works for you all? And another person asked, I've been with the same company for 30 years. Whenever I change internally, provided with the official, range or increase that they typically give, which makes sense. Excuse me. They know your current salary, so it seems like there's no possibility of negotiation. Do companies normally have more flexibility, even if they pretend not to? This is a great question. It really depends on the company. So I would say, though, I always want people to ask because regardless. So I know the policy is this. This year, I feel I performed above and beyond in these areas. Can we negotiate for, a couple of percentages higher? So no matter what the answer is, in a lot of cases, or at least in enough cases, they will have some wiggle room and they'll tell you if they don't. But if you don't ask, you're not going to get it, right? So I would always ask and just have this open conversation about it. Now, we talked about these elements a little bit already, so I'm not going to harp on them too much. But we want you to think about your leadership skills and those soft skills too, whether you are good working remotely or other things. And when you are negotiating for a new job, we like it when people present and create, even if it's very short and sweet, or they just verbally talk about a 30, 60, 90-day plan that they would implement how they would see spending their first 90 days of this brand new job so that the employer has a sense of, oh, this is how this person thinks and what it would be like if I hired them. And in our coaching services, we work with our clients on creating this and we have examples, et cetera. So with your leadership and soft strengths, this wheel is something that you can use to identify what some of your top strengths are. This is from Development Dimensions International. If you rate yourself in each of the areas and identify your top 3 areas of strength, these are the things that, if they are relevant to the job that you're going for, if they're not relevant, you don't need to bring them up. But if they are relevant, this helps you identify what some of those soft skills are, those leadership strengths are that you want to discuss during the course of your negotiation. Like, because I know that I'll be able to hit the ground running, ABC, XYZ. We love it when clients will also have someone else that knows them well rank them on this scale too, because every once in a while we're really good at something that we don't fully realize or how we're coming across. And our last few tips before we get to Q&A, so feel free to put those in the Q&A box, is prepare your presentation, your conversation with them. Make sure that you've got your resume up to date. Make sure you know that, these are the top 2 or 3 projects and results if they're giving me pushback that I want to bring up. In some cases, during the course of your interview, maybe you came up with like a quick little brag book or portfolio that you helped kind of present your case to sell yourself for when it's time for that negotiation. Okay. So there's lots of different things that we can do to prepare for the entire interview process that help bring you to the right place for your negotiation as well. And as part of when we're talking about presentation on this slide, practice your ask in front of the mirror over and over so that it just flows. And you're not uncomfortable saying, this is the salary range I'm looking for. Does this work within your range? So tip number 9 is to be really, really clear and direct on your ask. Don't talk too much. This starts to diffuse our position, if you will. So you want to know, this is what I want to ask for. You can use language like this based on my past performance and qualifications. I'm asking for X. Is that within your range? Then be quiet and let them answer. Okay. Include a range in there. Like we said, depending on what your salary research is, we always tell people though, which I know you all realize, but to err on the side of asking for the higher end of the range because it's easier, obviously, to negotiate. It's harder to negotiate up versus down. So start a little bit higher, and it's okay to say I'm looking for the top end of the range. And I would like to know with this last poll here for today, Lynn, if we could do this one, if anyone has performed salary research before. I bet most people have, but I just wanted to check on this really quickly. And then last couple of slides, remember how we talked about at the beginning, and we'll give you a moment to complete this poll. Weave those concerns that they might have about your candidacy into your interview prep and into your conversation with them. And oops, sorry. Would they be worried about your transferable skills or experience or lack of anything there? Are they going to be concerned maybe about you're going to be demanding a higher salary or you're overqualified or something else? There's language you can use to address this issue throughout the course of the process so that they just don't say, well, this is what's going to happen and I'm going to walk away. And there's some examples there. And it looks like we've got good numbers here with this poll, which is great. I think that what's wonderful about all the salary research out there on the internet, et cetera, is we have more access to this information, which is good. And for those of you that have not, that's okay. The resources there, like we talked about, can be really helpful for you. So we want you to practice. And you know what, Len, let's just go ahead and launch this last poll while we had polls. We're poll heavy at the end here today, everybody. So thanks for your patience. Really good idea to practice in front of and with someone else. And part of what you want to pay attention to is not just the words that you're using, but how is your tone? Are you coming across as confident? Nonverbal. I wave my hands around when I talk because I'm animated, but sometimes that's distracting. So I'll hold a pen when I'm trying not to do that. So make sure that you're also paying attention to those nonverbals, your tone of voice, and everything else. Because inevitably, when we get nervous, we tend to talk more softly, or we talk more than we should, and we ramble a little bit. And you want to make sure that you are talking, and this is my analogy, like a newscaster. This is what I'm asking for. Is that the range? Tell me a little bit more. Let's talk about it. That kind of stuff. And it's a really good idea to have someone that can help you with this. And we've got a good number, 38% that do. That's great. I would recommend finding a mentor that can help you throughout your career. And by the way, or looking for mentors and getting help with anything we talked about today, the Georgia Tech Alumni Association and fellow alum are great resources to network with people. Avoid minimizing expressions when you're making the ask. And then our final slide before today, and then we'll get to all of our questions. Just as a quick reminder, tie your accomplishments and value to the bottom line. What is it going to do, or what are you going to do for them? Provide those tangible results along the way. Feel free to include testimonials and recommendations. Provide a range of the salary if needed. Never bash your former employer. If you don't get what you want, do not get worked up and make it personal. It's usually not about you. It's about the budget constraints of the organization. And also, don't talk too much. And remember, on the right-hand side here, if you can't get this right now, can I get it later? Always make sure you know what the next steps are for the negotiation or interview process. Ask for time to think about what they come back to you with. You don't have to answer right then. Always thank them for their time, ask about next steps, and create a follow-up plan. Okay, I'm going to bring up 2 quick slides before or as we start to answer questions. We've got a fantastic Georgia Tech Design Your Ideal virtual webinar workshop. It's a 4 series workshop to design your ideal career. I'll put a link in there in a moment, but I want to answer some of these questions. So hasn't come up. Okay, got it. In my experience, online salary research has not been accurate with the exception of entry-level roles. Yes, to a certain extent, that's true, but I would still do it because with different levels, if you can try to get a sense of kind of what the range is from the different websites, it's at least worth checking that out so you have a sense of things. Yes, there can be discrepancies, and as the roles become more senior, I would agree with asking your peers across the board, regardless, but yes, more so for senior roles. This is also where I would talk to and network with and connect with recruiters as well, because especially C-suite recruiters, they're going to know what the right range is too. And this again is where Georgia Tech alum can, come in handy. Another question, how do I deal with the question that almost always comes right at the end of the initial screening call? What salary do you make right now? Or the variation, what salary are you looking for? This is where, when we talked about at the beginning, where you give them a range and give them a broader range so that it's kind of covering your bases a little bit, but then right there and ask them and say, is this within the range? Because I'm open to discussing this further if I'm not quite on the right track, if you will. Okay. So saying something like that so it's not just ended. And as we start to answer these other questions and comments, and please feel free to put more in here, remember we talked about at the beginning to write down one action step. We would love if you would take a moment to do that. Love it if you would share it in the chat box. That would be great for accountability. And sometimes it gives other people some ideas too. There's a link to our ideal career workshop in there. Do your action step for us. Also link to the slides and link to the console too. What about Latin countries? Are managers expecting and open to salary negotiations? I will be honest with you. My instinct is that yes, absolutely, because I think across the board this is the case, but I cannot say I'm an expert in that. So I would actually like do a little ChatGPT research just to be safe. But from my understanding from the clients that we have worked with who are in overseas, that there is the possibility for negotiation. It's a little bit less. I think there's usually a little bit less back and forth, and sometimes they're a little bit more rigid in what they can offer, but I would still ask. How large of a range is appropriate to request? This is where I usually am looking around like 5K, give or take, for the range, depending on where you're at within the negotiation process. Any other questions? Okay, is it appropriate to have different ranges in mind based on location? Yes, I would definitely keep geographic location in mind. All right, Len, as we're waiting for any more questions or comments to come through, is there anything that you wanted to say or announce, or Charlotte, either way? And it's okay if not, just wanted to give us another minute. Oh, and we've got a question. Okay, so sorry. If the salary does not come up in the first interview, when is a good time to bring it up? So closer to the time when you think they might be giving you an offer, there usually is a natural cadence to things. So this could be like in the third or fourth conversation or interview that you're having with them. It also depends on who you're speaking with as well. So if you're speaking with one of the colleagues that you'd be working with, they're not going to negotiate salary with you. So it also depends on who you're talking to. If your leader is not business savvy, what's the best way to tie back actions and performance to the bottom line when that concept may be lost on them? Yeah, this is a great question. So I would still do it anyway. And think about what does resonate with them. Like, I hate to say it this way, but if it's going to end up being like you're going to make their job easier, what's going to rub them the right way, so to speak, and what would drive them or motivate them if it's a little bit less about, the business of things. So I would think about that as well as tying it to the bottom line of the business. But I think what we're saying here is thinking about the bottom line could kind of depend on even maybe what's going on within the organization. And a final question, you're welcome. Thanks for asking this. Talk about working with us as a coach. So I have multiple coaches on my team. When I do a consult with someone, I am deciding who the coach is that's going to be best to work with you on my team. We talk with people for half-hour increments or 1 hour increments every week, every other week, once a month, depending on what works for them. And we have resources and materials that come with the coaching. There's always an agenda for each call. There's homework and action steps to take. We have you fill out an intake form at the very beginning, and you can purchase a one-time session or you can purchase bundles of sessions. So that's the basic gist of it. It's kind of like an athletic trainer if you were going to the gym. You've got a certain period of time. We're helping coach you on what you need to do next and what you need to improve. All right, we've got another question. Is it worth pursuing a salary negotiation with current company while actively looking for another job? It is if it's going to make you want to stay, if it's going to be worth you staying, if they give you a certain amount. If you're leaving for other reasons, like it's toxic and you're just got to get out of there, then I mean, you could do it just for the practice, but in my mind, limited energy, like I would only necessarily do it if it's going to help you stay where you are, but you can still look. I like for people to have like lots of different options in the hopper. So I think it is a good idea um, if it's going to help you stay or change your mind about staying. All right. So remember, before we go today, two-way conversation, setting the right tone. Throughout the course of it, asking a question after you say something, you ask a question to invite that conversation. Okay, and Len, anything you want to say before we go? Resources or anything else? Or are you good?
We are thrilled that you were so gracious to share salary and benefits negotiation with us. It is always changing. I think the tenets of be confident, be well prepared, and try your best to make it a discussion really goes a long way to achieving the desired result. Ultimately, I mean, the alumni that we work with, they have so much to offer. Uh, but being able, like as you mentioned, being able to quantify and qualify what they bring to the table and the value and the impact it has on their organization, that's going to really help them negotiate the best benefit. And what I also learned was there are so many softer benefits that really do impact the bottom line. Because if you don't have to commute one additional day to the office, and that's wear and tear on your car and fuel prices and everything else, that really makes a difference. And vacation and a lot of different other benefits. So lifestyle matters, and thanks for opening our eyes up to all of those components to the negotiation process.
No problem.
We are right at time, so fantastic job again. And we really appreciate everyone's participation. Uh, as we've mentioned, we'll make these slides and the recording available to all of our participants, and we'll also be on GT Connect. So I strongly encourage you to utilize that resource for networking, for outreach with other Georgia Tech alumni. That's kind of our LinkedIn just for tech alumni, and it is very, very well utilized. And we have, in excess of 22,000 alumni on there who are actively connecting and networking with one another. Very, very easy platform to use, and it has all of our webinars. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your participation. And as always, go Jackets.
Thanks. Good luck, everybody.